Welcome to the Seriously podcast. I'm your host, Annaliese Gann. Now let's get into it. Welcome to the Seriously podcast, where we make light of serious conversations with really interesting people. Alisha Aitken-Radburn is an author and reality TV star. After appearing on the Honey Badgers season of The Bachelor Australia and then Bachelor in Paradise, where she met her husband Glenn, Alisha is no stranger to the spotlight, but admits sometimes that white-hot spotlight that makes you famous can be the same thing that burns you. Her book, The Villian Edit, dives into what it was like for her to be framed as a villain on the series and the impact it had on her life. I wanted to catch up with Alisha to discuss all of this and more. So here she is, Alisha. Alisha, welcome to Seriously.
I am so excited to be here.
Thanks so much for coming in. I don't know you too well, so I want to start.
I know. I feel like this is going to be a bonding session.
Yeah, I know. I'm so excited. But I want to start the interview with some rapid fire questions.
Perfect.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Cocktails or wine?
Cocktails.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Oh, Perth. Oh, no, that's so boring. But I've lived over east, and Perth is stellar.
I love that. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
An early bird.
Really?
Yeah, particularly for work. I'll get up at 4 o'clock and crank out 2 or 3 hours, and I'm way more productive than any time of the day.
Wow. Okay. And are you a planner or do you prefer spontaneity?
Planner.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting because I want to lead in with saying your journey starts quite spontaneously.
Correct.
I mean, that's how we all know you. The Australian public came to know you and love you on The Bachelor Australia.
Oh, maybe not that first series.
No, but Bachelor in Paradise we did.
Yeah. But the later ones, they started to like me. The first one was a little bit rocky.
And we're gonna get into that and talk about that. But take me back. Can you remember applying for the show and what was that like?
I do. I was actually in Paris when I applied. I had just gone through a really, really bad breakup with, I think everyone has that past relationship where they felt like, this could be the one. It was probably a little bit of youth and naivety. I was in uni when we were dating, and I really wanted him to be the one, but it wasn't a very healthy relationship. And I finally kind of mustered up the courage to get myself out of the relationship, and I did this kind of like girl power trip to Europe. We were actually meant to go on the Euro trip together, and as a part of the sort of like realisation that I needed to leave him, I went to him and I was like, I'm leaving the relationship. I'll pay you out your half of the Europe trip, or you can fly over with me and then I'll just start like a different itinerary of I'll go to hostels instead of hotels. But I went, so he let me pay him out. I was in Paris. I was really lonely. I thought it was going to be girl power. I underestimated how hurt and alone and how much I missed him. And it was around Christmas time, so it was particularly exacerbated, going on like Snapchat and seeing everyone's like fun family Christmases. And I remember I went down to this like French 7-Eleven equivalent, bought a whole bunch of like prosciutto and cheese and a couple of bottles of red wine. And it was after one full bottle of red wine that I saw the ad for Bachelor applications. And the Bachelor application actually takes like 3 hours to fill out.
Oh, wow.
And so I sat and I took my time. I figured I've got nothing else to do. And then, the snowball just kept rolling from there.
Wow. Then it all happened for you.
Yeah.
I love that story though, like cheese, red wine.
Exactly.
So
all the good things. Maybe I am a wine person.
Yeah. That's amazing. But you get to the filming stage, you're chosen. You walk down the aisle. and you see the honey badger, or Nick Cummins, as we know. He's a massive rugby player, or he was in Australia, for those who don't know. Did you know who he was when you were walking down the aisle?
I knew who the Bachelor... So basically, the producers kind of made a mistake, and on the same day as all of the contestants from across Australia were meant to fly to Sydney, and I was living in Canberra at the time, so I was being flown from Canberra to Sydney on that same day. And I don't know if it was a mistake or intended, but there was an article in the newspaper that wasn't just like... There was speculation all the time about who the Bachelor would be. Like, I actually remember before I knew him, now he's just like a Perth regular, but there was always speculation Cam Cranley was going to be the Bachelor.
I love Cam.
And I remember, I don't think I've ever spoken about this, but I have a chat history somewhere with one of my girlfriends where she's linked me like a pedestrian TV article. And it was all about Cam, and it was like, hot Perth firefighter, gonna be the Bachelor. And I was like, oh my God, that's my husband. Cringe. Now we're like mates with Cam Cranley.
Yeah, so. I know. It's awkward.
Sorry, Cam. But there was like a proper photo shoot with the honey badger. I wasn't a rugby union fan, so I didn't know of him, but I Googled him immediately, and to me he seemed like I was quite excited that he was the Bachelor, because he seemed different. He seemed like a little bit more interesting. That sounds terrible to other bachelors, but like all the other bachelors were like quite clean cut, quite proper.
He's a bit more rugged.
He was rugged. He's a larrikin.
Athletic.
Yeah, and I kind of thought maybe I would fare better with a sort of like rugged larrikin than the kind of golden boy.
Mm-hmm. And how long into the season or the series did you realise they're pitching me as the villain? Like, I'm being presented as the villain because we'll get into it later, that's what your book is about. How did that feel, and when did you know?
So I think it was a sort of gradual process. I think pretty much immediately I had an inkling that I wasn't what I would call a wifey. Like I could tell that me and Honey Badger didn't particularly connect.
Yep, from both ends?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, but I was sort of like, my whole experience on The Bachelor was like, I think the kids would call it Delulu these days, but it was probably more like I was young and hopeful, and so when I met Nick, I didn't have that kind of assertiveness that I think that you develop as you grow older, where I was able to kind of, I was approaching men thinking, like assessing whether I was interested in them. Yeah. It was all like whether they liked me or not.
And then you just take it.
Yeah, I was just like...
I used to be like that too.
That's all that's important to me in this interaction, that this guy likes me. I would never ever interrogate whether like I thought they were interesting or funny or what they brought to the table, which I think I think it comes with age, but it took me a while. And so, but I think I kind of did have an understanding past all the delulu that we were not, like, I'd been in serious relationships. I'd had sparks before, and I knew we didn't have a spark. And so then, like, I kind of knew that I wasn't that sort of, like, top 5 contender. And then in terms of being positioned as the villain, and, you know, in my book, which we'll get to, I sort of interrogate what my contribution was to making me a villain. And I think once I knew I wasn't a front runner, I got really insecure about my place on the show, and I think I actually lent into bitchiness and because I wanted to be relevant.
Yeah, and it happens. Like when you're in that position, you got producers looking at you, you've got cameras on you. I've been on 2 TV shows, not on that level, but like similar. You kind of want to say what they want to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like when you're sitting with the producer, like with, I mean, you're definitely a particular sort of person. Like I think it definitely, I would say that people who are people pleasers are more predisposed to being able to be manipulated by producers in this way, because a people pleaser just wants to do a good job and wants to please the person that they're sitting with. And so therefore, you know, the way that I describe it in the book is when you're sitting in a booth with a producer and you kind of push the bounds of starting to be a bit snarky, and you get a laugh from them, or maybe you get a comment that's like, oh, Australia's going to love that. Then you like continue to push the boundaries, and so like I think there's a playing with that, like there's a very blurred line between a funny contestant on a reality TV show, like fun, snarky, and being bitchy and villainous. And I think that producers kind of encourage you to push those boundaries. Yeah. And so that's how I sort of found myself in that position.
For those who don't know, there was 3 villains, like in a group. Yourself. Who else?
Kat and Romy,
Yes.
who I'm still very close to.
Yeah, so you're still friends?
Yeah.
So what do they think of it?
I think they had their own unique experiences.
Yeah.
And I talked about this a lot when I was publicising my book and I went on a book tour, that my book and my experience of my villain edit is just that. It's mine. And I think that, like, you know, I've reflected on that period of my life and I've sort of found, I feel that I contributed to my villain edit, and there are genuinely things that, like, that there were aspects of my portrayal that I felt were deserved.
Yeah.
But I think that there will be other villains out there, whether they're, you know, the villains that were with me on my season, Kat and Romy, or whether that's people from other franchises. There will be people that reflect on their experiences and genuinely feel like they were really hard done by, or they reflect on their own behaviour and they're like, I did nothing wrong. And that's their prerogative.
Okay. I've interviewed a lot of people on this show and, yeah, I've heard mixed reviews about it. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Now, talk me through. So you come off The Bachelor, you're watching the series, you're into it. How quick into the series are you facing scrutiny from the public? And what made you want to do Bachelor in Paradise?
Yeah.
That's like, were you like worried to do
Sucker
that?
for punishment.
Or were you like, no, I want to find love? Like, fuck what everyone thinks. Sorry to swear. But
It was never, I shouldn't say it was never about finding love. I think it was first and foremost a TV experience. I think everybody that goes on one of those, like the really heavy love focused shows, I think there's always like a glimmer of hope that you'll be the person that gets the love outcome, because like everyone in, like, so many of us in this world are searching for love. And so, you know, how fabulous if you find it wherever you find it. But it definitely wasn't. I was under no illusions that going on a show competing with 28 other women was the best environment for me to find a partner. So in terms of scrutiny, it started pretty early. It was probably like episode 2 or 3. About the midpoint of the season was where our characterization and sort of like we started, like, people started making memes with our faces on like Regina George and Katie Heron and all of like the actual Mean Girls poster and stuff like that. And then yeah, it was all obviously like very solidified towards the end. And in terms of going back for another round, one, the edit aside, I had really enjoyed the process of being on the TV show. Like, I really had connected with producers. I thought the whole TV production world was really fascinating. It was really fun. Like, I mean, you would know. It's a really good time.
Yeah.
I particularly, like, I really enjoyed it. I studied media and communications in university, and it was kind of like, it was just an insight into this whole world that I'd never discovered. And so I really wanted to go back for that reason. And from the sort of, like, I guess, personal brand perspective, I thought, it can't get much worse.
Yeah.
And I think I had faith that, particularly on Bachelor in Paradise, which was a different structure, and I had faith that maybe with another chance to share my personality, maybe a more nuanced version of myself would be presented.
And I think it was.
Yeah.
Like, it was very positive in Bachelor in Paradise. And that's where you met your now husband.
Yes.
Glenn Smith.
Yes.
Congrats, by the way. You got married last year.
We did. Oh my God, I had to think about that. We're coming up to our 1 year anniversary, April 22nd.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's crazy. We're going back down. So we got married in Denmark, and we're going back down for like our 1 year. And it just feels crazy that it's come around so soon.
So it was always meant to be. You were always meant to find love on TV.
Yeah, and
which is wild.
It's like so funny because I remember when I remember when I first started the whole Bachelor journey, even though it was primarily driven by new experience, I remember going on this walk one day when I was really in the sort of mode of deciding whether I would leave my job and whether I'd do The Bachelor. And I thought to myself, I just have this feeling that putting myself out there in this way is going to lead to love. And I think that, like, I think my thinking was it might not necessarily be with, like, a contestant. I thought it was going to be with, like, an audio guy or, like, the camera dude. And I did flirt with one on Instagram DMs after the first show. But you know, like, the fact that it actually happened on the show was amazing.
So you walk in.
Yeah.
And then you meet Glenn. Or he walks in.
I walked in.
You walked in.
Yeah.
What was your first impressions of him? I watched it. I'm pretty sure you were like, he's so hot.
Yeah.
Like, wasn't that the first thing that you said?
Yeah. And he's just like, he was not my usual type in the sense that, like, I've never gone for, like, what I would describe as, like, the jock. Like, the guy who's, like, sporty and, like, really conventionally attractive. Like, I'd always dated nerds and, like... And I think almost that was, like, a bit self-protective of being, like... I don't know. I thought if I dated, like, the hot, popular jock, if you, like, think about American movie tropes... Like, I think of, like, John Tucker Must Die. Like, if you date the John Tucker, it's like you're going to get your heart broken.
Yeah.
Or also, like, on top of getting your heart broken, I kind of just thought that, like, super handsome guys didn't have much to, like, offer intellectually.
Yeah.
Which is so rude. Because he, like, I fast figured out that he was, like, absolutely everything that I was looking for.
Yeah. So exciting. So you hit it off on the show.
Yeah.
So when did you start dating?
Oh, well,
like, officially? Wasn't it straight off the show?
Dated off the show. So, like, the last scene from the show is a commitment ceremony where you're sort of like, I've actually, my wedding band is... That's the ring that he gave me on Bachelor in Paradise. And we just repurposed it, cost of living crisis. No. I just that. Like, I was very sentimental. And so after we sort of, like, said I love you on the show, they, like, film one last little scene with you where you're, like, in your pretty outfits and you're like holding a ring and you're like hugging each other. And I did like a confirmation. I was like, are we boyfriend and girlfriend? And he was like, yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so from that point forward, we were boyfriend and girlfriend, and we were just like trying to make it work on the outside.
And that's the hardest thing, is making it work.
Correct. Particularly when you're living on other sides of the country.
Hey guys, if you've loved listening to the Seriously podcast, we'd really appreciate a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify podcasts. It keeps us making incredible content for all of you to hear. Thanks so much. So you did long distance.
Yeah.
You had your ups and downs.
Yes.
That have been widely publicised.
Yes.
Are you open to talk about that?
Yeah.
Because that's people don't talk about it, but at the start of a new relationship, there are a lot of ups and downs. But people don't talk about it.
And I wouldn't even describe it as like ups and downs. I describe it as we had a very significant down.
You're like, it was just down.
Because I feel like sometimes when I hear people being like, oh, my relationship has ups and downs, I'm like, oh, so you guys just like fucking hate each other and your like relationship must be really toxic.
Yeah.
If you're just constantly like, you know, it's like I see like girls be like, oh, we fight all the time, but like we love each other. And I get it, but I think that like sometimes we need to analyse whether we're actually like in a healthy relationship. So anyway, to speak about the down, and I go into it in much more salacious depth in the book, The Villian Edit. But when we first came off the show, we had one weekend in Sydney together, and then Glenn flew back to Perth. And then on the second weekend that we were outside the show, so this would have been 4 weeks since we'd met, he was at a house party and he kissed a girl that we were on the show with.
Yeah.
And the girl that was, like I'd say before, because I entered the show as an intruder, and it was the girl that he had been sort of like seeing before I entered.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And so
they already had a, like friendship.
Yeah. And so obviously that was horrendous.
Yeah.
So he rings me the next day and he discloses what's happened. And then I was like, okay, well, I was devastated. And I was like, okay, well, we're done. And then across the next week, he kind of put a couple of things in motion where, you know, he gave me a call, and once the emotions had kind of not softened, but, you know, we were out of that, like, intensity of learning about what had happened. We had a little bit more of a chat about it and kind of tried to dive into why that had happened. And then it's really hard because it's a very long time ago to remember the cadence of events.
Yeah.
But basically, we shared a show psychologist. So there was like a psychologist on Bachelor in Paradise. We both worked with her, as I guess you would kind of go to a couples therapist if you face this situation. And that was really helpful. And then a few things. I told him that I was really particularly embarrassed to tell my mum what had happened, because my mum had flown to Fiji and she was featured on the show and she met him in Fiji, and it felt really lovely. And I said to him, you know, it would go... I was still very much in the mindset that we weren't going to be taking the relationship forward.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I said, like, you know, if there was any hopes that we would give it, like that I would give you another go, it would go a long way if you rang my mum and told her what you did.
It's always apologising to the mum.
And he did. He did.
That's good.
And like,
did she forgive him?
She did. My mum's a very forgiving person, and that kind of rattled me even more because like my mum rang me and was like, "Oh, I thought that was like quite brave," and then I sort of complicated things further, and I was at a party with the whole cast, and someone was congratulating me on, you know, the fact that we'd made it to the end, and I had been drinking quite comprehensively by this point, and I just told everyone at this party what had happened, and I burst into tears. And then I continued to drink, and then later that night I slept with someone from the cast that Glenn also knew.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then you got to pick up the book because it's very...
Everyone go and buy the book, The Villain Edit.
It's very well deconstructed in there, but basically in the process of me being at that party and sleeping with this person, Glenn was flying over to Sydney to have a face-to-face conversation with me.
Was he on the plane?
He was. He
He's
had
like midair.
literally. So I messaged him after I'd slept with this guy. Literally 20 minutes after I was in a Uber with the dude.
Yeah.
And I messaged him and I messaged Glenn and I said, "When do you get to Sydney?" And he said, "Oh, I'm just like checking in at my hotel." And I looked at the guy that I'd slept with and who knew Glenn, was quite good friends with Glenn. And I said, "Oh, look, I think I'm going to go and see Glenn." And he was like, "Yeah, live your life." And I was like, "Okay, thank you." And I added a stop to the Uber, got out and let him go on his merry way. And I went and I went and saw Glenn, and we had a very, very difficult, intensely emotional night.
Yeah.
And then the next day we sat in a park and we just deconstructed the whole relationship, our actions, what we thought about love, what we thought about monogamy, and from that conversation, we decided that we would continue the relationship. And
Congrats. That's really mature.
Oh, it was massive and it wasn't easy. And there was many times that I like really doubted my decision making because I think we do live in this culture that is very much, and I see it in, and a lot of the time it's very warranted. A lot of the time women do need to dump the guy immediately. Like the person is absolutely taking advantage of them and treating them poorly. And so much of the time, dump him is completely the right mantra. But I do think that there is complexity to that. And so that's sort of what I've tried to interrogate in the book. And I've written a few pieces outside of the book, particularly one for Mamma Mia, that kind of speaks to the fact that like our deepest crisis was also what I felt really showed each other who we really were at our core. And actually the way that he handled our deepest crisis was like extremely green flaggy for me.
That's beautiful.
Like he stepped up, he took accountability. He wasn't doing this thing where, you know, he was like, evading what he had done. He felt sincere remorse and he was prepared to take the steps to repair the relationship. And I think so much women are looking for, like, something will go wrong in a relationship, and then particularly women have it like manipulated to be their fault. And the man will kind of like excuse themselves of accountability and or just like don't want to deal with their own actions, so they run. And so I really appreciated his approach, and it was not the best. It's like it was not what you would expect as the sort of like intro piece to a I think we're coming up to 5-year relationship and 1 year married. But, you know, we're still here. We're still going strong and very much in love.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
No worries.
And I think that's important for people to hear because no judgment from my end. Like, I feel like all the relationships, all of my married friends, like the start of their relationship, the first few months were rocky because you're getting to know each other and there's like conflicts and like you're different. Like you're two different people trying to join lives and it's never going to be easy at the start.
I also just think like on, you know, married life.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to be in a long-term relationship with another person, and this is to take it, like, obviously our language has been very heteronormative, but if you're in a long-term relationship with anybody, you are going to have moments in that relationship where you feel like the best example. To get us through that part of our relationship, we both read a writer called Esther Perel, who,
Love her.
she's queen. And
psychiatrist.
Yeah, she's like a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
And she writes about this, like one of the defining moments from one of her book called The State of Affairs for me was she was like, we have this expectation that our partner will never enter a lift and someone looks at them and kind of checks them out. And that doesn't give them like a fun feeling inside. And I was like, and I guess like, key to it was interrogating myself and my own sexuality and the way that I move in the world. And I was like, well, I can't hold myself to that standard. Like I will, if I'm at an event or a party or whatever, feeling absolutely hot and a dude like looks you up and down, you feel good about yourself.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't mean that you going to be unfaithful to your partner or, you know, monogamy is a choice. And I think we need to, you're going to have challenges along the way and it's how you approach those challenges as a couple, which determines your success, basically.
Thank you for sharing that.
No worries.
Really appreciate it. Can we talk about your wedding?
Yes.
It looked very fancy.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said
it was very fancy. I was like, damn, girl.
Oh, I love that.
That looks nice.
I all of the Pinterest boards that I was looking at were like modern and elegant.
It looked like a living Pinterest board.
Well, it was none of my own creativity. It was all of the vendors / it was showing people Pinterest photos of much more aesthetic, much more tasteful people and being like, hey, can we do this?
Do this.
Yeah.
Congrats. That's
Thank
amazing.
you.
How was
awesome.
it? You had some like A-list celebs there as well.
Yeah, that was the intention. I guess A-list. Who is
in
A-list?
Australia, like Brooke Blurton.
Yes.
Who else? Yeah,
that's basically it.
Okay.
Is it? Lockie and Irina.
Yeah, Lockie and Irina.
Yeah.
They were there.
Yeah.
I knew there was a few. I just couldn't remember. But
Jared Seng, Survivor.
He's amazing. Photographer.
Beautiful photographer.
Incredible.
So yeah, I guess. Let's call it a star-studded wedding.
It was.
Yeah.
It made headlines. You did very well.
Thank you. It was. I read all this stuff, and I mean, you'll be coming into it now with your own wedding planning.
Yes.
But I read all these comments of like I was in the big group, Australian group, Wedshed, and all these girls being like happy to report it was the best day of my life. And it really does ring true. Like I had such an amazing day. And I think what that comes down to is I think the most special, what makes weddings so special is that it's just all of your people. It was all of my most favourite people. And, you know, we really took a punt having it down in Denmark, 5 hours south of Perth, and basically all of my people were from over east, and I had people who like I was so grateful that they travelled, but like I was almost surprised that they came, who were travelling from like flying from Canberra to Perth and then renting a car and driving down to Denmark. And it was just so special.
The things people do for love. When I was living over east, my best friend had a wedding in Dunsborough. Yeah. And I was like, I'm not fucking missing that. So, like, I did that thing. Yeah, I flew over and drove down. Oh, you're so good. No, so I get it. Now, to wrap this interview, your new book, The Villain Edit, it's out. It's very impressive. Congratulations. Did you ever think you'd be an author?
Oh, did I ever think? I think I hoped, but if it wasn't for the Bachelor experience, I don't think that I would have written a book off, I guess. Like, I needed the experience to shape what I was going to write about. And it's funny because people have asked me now if I intend to write a second book, and I am just most definitely not writing a second book unless I live more life and I have more to say. Because at the moment, I just like, to be honest.
Was your whole life in that book? It was, like, up until now?
It was 5 years. So it was like a 5-year period from applying for The Bachelor to getting engaged. And so I'll either need to live more life, or if I was like, I've contemplated writing fiction. Ooh. And if I was to write fiction, I would just need I need such a strong idea that it's basically like writing itself.
And you have a publisher?
Yeah, Alan and Unwin, who are absolutely fabulous.
Massive.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So good. Can I ask what's next for Alisha?
Ooh, it might sound a little bit boring after all the reality TV and, you know, all the glitz and glam of wedding life and all of that. But I now work for a not-for-profit in Perth called Uniting WA, and we do services for people experiencing homelessness, disability support, mental health support, FDV, and I'm the senior manager of advocacy there, which means I help with a lot of sort of basically promoting systemic change to government. So the people that we work with, trying to actually address the drivers of vulnerability. And I've been waiting for a while in my professional life to feel like I've found a place where I belong and that I feel really fulfilled. And so I'm hoping, I just can't wait to continue my work there. And I'm also looking for, I think probably the next chapter for me is looking for ways that I can more strongly fuse my professional life and my profile, and being able, I feel so gifted with this Instagram profile and all of these followers. And I think I'm probably just figuring out the most appropriate way to kind of segue my followers who are who are there for my love story and who, started following me because of me and Glenn. But I'm trying to sort of figure out how I can pivot to showing people more of my work and hopefully making a difference. So
I think you're doing an incredible job of that. You should be very proud.
Thank you.
Can I ask one last thing?
Yes.
Do you guys want kids?
Yes, we do. We do.
So you could have a baby soon.
Maybe.
I'm going to be that annoying traditional person.
Yeah. Yes, it's in the works. But, I definitely, I underestimated how, I kind of thought that, you shake hands with a guy when you're off the pill and then you're pregnant. And trying to conceive really doesn't work like that.
It really doesn't.
Yeah.
I know. We're so told that from a young age. Take God. The pill from when you're 13.
I thought he would sneeze on me and I'd be like, twins. Doesn't happen.
So you are trying then?
Yeah. We're
Congratulations.
Trying, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Have you announced that yet?
I'm probably it's really difficult with work. I think that there's a whole world of sensitivity. Yeah. I'm pretty open. I don't think my bosses would be surprised to learn that a woman in her early 30s who just got married is hoping to have a baby one day and start a family. But I think probably the reason why I haven't sort of like broadcasted over my Instagram is just because I think that there is still this sensitivity around, you know, if we do want to start a family, what does that look like for my professional life? And
it
like,
means we lose all our money.
Yeah,
I'm a corporate girl as well.
Yeah.
So our income's just see ya.
Yeah. So that's really challenging. And I think it's been and it's so good to be able to talk to your audience who I think like a lot of people would be able to sort of relate, where you do sort of have this growing anxiety of like, I think we always talk about like, can we have it all? And particularly when I've found myself in such a fulfilling place for my career, but also like wanting to start a family, it's hard. It's like, I don't feel like I can have it all. At some point, like, hopefully we will get pregnant, but then that will mean other things for my working life. So
yeah,
it's a hard balance.
No, I totally get it. I'm in the midst of deciding things too.
Yes.
So I so get it. And it's really hard as a woman.
It's stressful.
And then it's more pressure on the man because they just have to work
all
the time.
Poor Glenn.
Around the clock. Alisha, you've been an amazing guest.
Oh my gosh, you are such an amazing host. And
thank you.
It's been such a pleasure being on Seriously.
Thank you for coming on Seriously. Thanks guys for tuning in this week, and we'll catch you next week for another guest. Bye.